Hi, Gama.
Skima.
I'm good. Listen, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Where did your story with Jesus begin?
That's a very interesting question, and there's a very, very long answer. So, for context sake, I'll just give you a bit of my entire life story. So, I was a very short schoolboy in my primary school days. I was actually the shortest in class. I was very skinny, and I'm cross-eyed. I don't know if you can see that. And I've got jagged teeth. So you can imagine what little boys did to me. I was bullied a lot, I was teased a lot, and basically the self-esteem was in tatters. I wanted to fit in so badly, but everyone made fun of me, and that really hurt me a lot. It also didn't help that at home things weren't very rosy. My parents fought a lot, and at this time Zimbabwe was going through a very bad recession. Things were tough, so there was a lot of shouting at home. However, I was kind of gifted at academics. So for many years, I used that as a crutch. I used my abilities at school as an identity. Like I was the smart kid and the like. But, I still never felt good enough, even if I passed and all that. And it was quite tiring. So I didn't feel accepted by my classmates, and I didn't feel accepted at home. I first met Jesus when I was 18 years old. I don't even remember the sermon. We had gone to a church, recently started going to that church because my mom and dad had started going to separate churches, and me and my siblings went with my mom. And I don't even remember the sermon, but I remember the morning of that day, I felt convicted that I was a sinner. This was very new to me, because all my life I felt like the star pupil. I felt like everyone else is wrong and I'm right. And in any event, I'm the victim. I'm the one that's bullied. I'm the one that feels underappreciated and all that stuff. So if anyone needed forgiveness, it was the people that teased me, the people that bullied me. But on this day in particular, I felt convicted that, hey, I'm a sinner. And it was heavy. I believe it to be the Holy Spirit. So that church, I was still in Sunday school. We used to go into the big church only for altar calls and stuff. And that day in particular, as soon as the altar call came up and was announced, I went forward. I don't even remember the prayer and stuff. All I know is that I wanted Jesus, and the adults said, well, come in front if you want Jesus. And I remember leaving the big hall, going back outside to the Sunday school and looking at the grass, looking at the trees, at that moment feeling so forgiven, so cleansed, so loved. It was this beautiful feeling. I was bubbling with joy, I wanted that feeling to last forever. And I can't even forget that day. I still remember it to this day. I went to my Sunday school teacher, told him, well, I've given my life to Jesus. There was a celebration, and she asked me what I wanted from Jesus. And I remember praying for my parents to be happy. And, she said, all you have to do to keep this feeling and whatnot is just to be a good boy. And, I went home bubbling with joy. But trouble soon began. For one, I realized that I wasn't a really good boy. So throughout the week, I'd make mistakes and feel condemned. And I felt like I was drifting away from Jesus. You see, I didn't understand the gospel. I had had this experience, but no one had explained the gospel, that you don't have to work for it. Jesus has already clothed you with his forgiveness and his perfect robes of righteousness. But I didn't get that. I thought I had to work to keep it. And remember, I was told you just need to be a good boy. So this went on for about 3 years. And by the end of the 3 years, I was really tired. Remember, life hasn't stopped. By this time, I was in high school and I wanted to fit in. Wasn't fitting in. I was still being teased. And I felt like God didn't care about me. And things at home were actually getting worse. So there came a point when at home things got really bad financially, and they had to transfer me from the private school I was at to a more affordable government school. And my results weren't that great at the time. I think it's because I was stressed, and I just stopped caring about trying to impress people. And it felt like this God wanted me to impress him as well by being a good boy. And I was tired of it. So one day on my way to look for a new school, I got lost, couldn't really find the school, and I was so frustrated. Something had happened at home. I think we had a fight with my mom, and I just decided, you know what? God didn't keep his promise. He didn't fix my parents' relationship, and I'm tired of working, tired of striving. And I said, God, you know what? I'm done with you. So I renounced my faith on the road. I still remember it when I was 15. For the next 5 years, I lived a life of, all sorts of bad things that you can imagine for a teenager. So I moved schools, I grew taller, had a growth spurt, and the girls took notice. So for the first time, I felt like I fit in, and I became really popular at my new school. And, I lived that life for 5 years. I was finally the cool kid. I finally felt accepted as the cool guy, and all that stuff. But, after 5 years of that lifestyle, I got to a point where it felt so empty and so dark. I remember having suicidal thoughts because it felt like my life had no purpose, no direction. And I then was invited to a church because, I just felt like something needs to change in my life. Unfortunately, I still didn't understand the gospel. So I went back to my default, which is striving to keep it this. I was so grateful that I felt like God had given me a second chance, but because I didn't understand the gospel, I started trying to make up for all those years that I'd lived my own way, not realizing that no, Jesus has paid for my forgiveness fully. I can't undo my past, and I can't pay for it. So this went on for 5 years. So this was me. If ever there was an evangelism call, I was there. All night prayers, I was there. Anything you can think of, all church activities, I was there, fervently serving and stuff. Because I felt like, these are all the things I need to do to get back into God's good books. Because I knew what I had done over those years, over those 5 years. And at the end of that, I felt really drained again. After 5 years, 4 or 5 years of doing that, I started questioning my faith. Why wasn't I feeling satisfied? Why wasn't I happy? Why did I always feel like I wasn't good enough in God's eyes? I still felt like I was falling short. And it bugged me. And this was around 2019, 2020. Then something beautiful happened in 2020, it's a tragic event for many. But for me, the COVID period was a blessing because we went into a lockdown and we stopped going to church, stopped going to work and everything. And I was home alone with some books I downloaded because I knew that I would have a lot of time to read and the like. And I don't know how I downloaded those books particularly. I was just curious, and one of them explained the gospel, how I didn't have to earn God's love, how Jesus' payment on the cross was complete, it was final, it was, what's the word I'm looking for? It was full payment for my sins. There's this verse in particular that stuck out for me. It's in Romans 4, verse 5, I believe. It says, however, to the one that does not work, but believes in God who justifies the ungodly, their faith is credited to them as righteousness. And this big word that I had seen since my first Jesus experience, because I used to think it means doing all the good things, just being a good boy. That's what I thought righteousness meant. But then I realized that righteousness was simply believing in Jesus. That was God's righteousness. And the more I read verses that in the New Testament, the more I realized how complete Jesus' payment was, how the work of the cross was complete. And I had to just lean and believe on what Jesus had done for me. it changed my life, realizing that I'm loved, and Jesus found me with that kind of love, and that he didn't want me to work for it or earn it just to receive it. And it was a process. It was a process. It wasn't, I didn't get it like in one day. But thankfully, the COVID lockdown wasn't one day. So throughout those months, I'll just lock myself in my room and read the Bible. And it felt like I could finally understand it now. And it changed my heart, man. You know, finding verses like, the one who believes in me has passed from death to life, that we are saved by faith alone in Christ, that it is by grace you have been saved. You know, you can't boast about it because it's not from your own work. So it broke my pride. It broke my religion. It broke my legalism, just, you know, because I used to believe that it's my works that get me into God's good books, but realizing that no, it's God himself that got me into his own good books by the sacrifice of his son. So that changed my life. That changed my heart. I can't fully, truly describe it, but the event that happened to me when I was 13, 12, at that church on that Sunday, it finally all made sense. That when I felt forgiven, cleansed, loved, and everything, this is what Jesus meant. It's something that I could not work for. So yeah, that has changed my heart, and I just want to share this truth and this good news with the world, because it has gave me new life. I feel confident in myself, in who God has, in what God has made. I feel like I'm worth something. I have value, and I can love other people because I've been loved. I can forgive other people because I've been forgiven. So yeah, in a long kind of nutshell, this is my gospel story, man. I'm loved, I'm forgiven, and I'm accepted. And I can finally rest in God's love and him in his acceptance. Finally, I fit in somewhere, and I don't have to lean on my intelligence or anything else that I have to be accepted. Jesus just accepted me as I am. So that's my story, man.
Wow. That's a great story. Anyway, thank you so much, Gama.
Thank you.
Cheers.